Yes, forgive me if I should recognize you, Megan, counted as tax season brain. Are you joining us as a member of the public?
I am representing the Oregon Society of CPAs. I'm here in attendance with Sherry McPherson.
Okay, perfect. All right. Good afternoon. This is Jason Orm, Chair of the Oregon Board of Accountancy Laws and Rules Committee. I'm calling this Zoom-only public meeting of the Laws and Rules Committee to order. Today is Tuesday, April 29th, and the time is 12:04 p.m. This meeting is being recorded. We have quorum to start this meeting, and we're expecting maybe additional members, but possibly not, to attend us shortly. Please be sure to mute your mic when you want to speak. Please either raise your hand so I can see it on your screen or use the virtual raise your hand option. Committee members, liaisons, and support staff can ask to speak at any time. For members of the public observing, please use the public comment opportunity for any comments you may have, unless specifically called upon. In addition, members of the public are limited to 3 minutes of comment, and the chair reserves the right to terminate comment if the comment does not pertain to the issues the committee is considering. Please do not use the chat room for any discussions. Should any technical issues arise, we'll pause the meeting until Andrew and Quinn have them resolved. I'll now take a roll call of members and guests. Jason Orm, Chair. Andrew, you're up next.
Andrew Barlow, Board Staff.
Angie.
Angie Hunt, Board Legal Counsel.
Ray.
Ray Johnson, member.
Sherry.
Sherry McPherson, committee member.
Megan.
Megan Kurz, OSCPA liaison.
Martin.
Martin Piccioni, Executive Director.
Beth.
Beth Spencer, committee member.
Amanda.
Amanda Fells, committee member.
Mr. Robinson.
Jason Robinson, board liaison.
Quinn.
Quinn Stoddard, board staff.
Is there anyone that I did not call on during the roll call? Hearing none. We should be good. Everybody received a copy of the draft agenda. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the agenda? It's brief. That's the brief meeting, briefer. I would accept a motion to approve the draft agenda.
So moved. Oops.
So moved by Sherry McPherson. And we need to, when we do this, Angie has taught us under new protocol, you need to state your full name when you move in second. So I got you covered, Sherry. Second.
Ray Johnson, second.
Ray Johnson, second. Any discussion?
Thank you, Angie.
I'll now call on each committee member present to separately vote. So Jason Orm, aye. Ray?
Ray Johnson, aye.
Sherry?
Sherry McPherson, aye.
Beth?
Beth Spencer, aye.
Amanda?
Amanda Fells, aye.
Wonderful. All right. I don't think we have any members of the public on with us. Is that correct, Quinn and Andrew? Okay. All right. So purpose for this session is just laying out what we're going to talk about. We had some things laid out for the meetings that we have planned, including this one. But we've got lots of stuff to do, but we can't quite start yet because we're still waiting for legislation. So the purpose of this meeting is to just kind of walk through and go, okay, here's what we think we're going to do, and here's how it works. And the things that ought to be on the agenda, pardon me. So 796, Martin, we're gonna, assuming 796 passes, there is a requirement in 796 for rule. That would be on our agenda, correct?
That's on, so on 796, the board acted at its February 5 meeting because those rules are, quite frankly, not connected to any of our existing rules chapters and are essentially solely germane to 796 in the sense that that's essentially to implement the accounting scholarship bill, which is what that number refers to. What's required is a rules framework around the grant agreement that will be authorized under, or grant agreements, plural, that will be authorized under this bill. And because of that, the board took action at its February meeting to say, because those rules are really all about the work that's happening in the pipeline committee, that essentially the pipeline committee is taking on that particular part of the rules work because it doesn't really overlap with anything that we normally do in our laws chapter in the laws and rules. So that piece is actually heading to a pipeline committee meeting on Friday. And the pipeline committee will work out essentially the detailed contents of the grant agreement related rules starting on Friday. So that's actually not on the agenda on a substantive way for the Laws and Rules Committee. But when we're talking about a calendar that's essentially about all the rulemaking activity, number one, the LRC needs to at least know that those rules are being developed. Second, that those rules will not touch on any of the existing rules chapters, but will have to be something entirely separate, effectively. And third, which connects to one of the items in this planning session section of the agenda, right? Part of what's happening here is there's an overlap between work that this committee needs to do this meeting, which is really an organizational planning ask, saying, here are all these different moving parts. What do we need to do about them? Are people okay with this outline plan, right? There's an overlap between that work that we would need to do as a committee anyway, and essentially a coincidental development that's coming from the governor's office to all state agencies to publish essentially to be more transparent about what plans they may have around rulemaking. So there is a deadline that's coming from the governor's office that's not unique to this board, but it's for all state agencies on May 1, on Thursday of this week, to essentially publish at least a draft rulemaking plan for, hey, what are you planning on and when and what does it look like, so that the public has some level of access to what's the current planning stage. So what we're doing here is one part is about work we need to do as a committee anyway to figure out what do we need to do and when. And the second part is doing that by part of looking at a draft document that essentially will help us meet that expectation from the governor's office, update it based on any feedback from this committee, and then actually bring that document will also be brought to a special board meeting tomorrow so that the board tomorrow can see either the document you have in front of you and or any edits or recommendations or changes that are coming from this group, right? So that we can bring that to the board tomorrow, April 30th, so that by the end of the day, April 30th, to meet the May 1 deadline, we have something published on the website. So that's kind of how it connects. There's both a governor's expectation for all state agencies, but it also overlaps with the work we need to do anyway as an LRC. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that wasn't too long of an answer, but I hope that makes sense to everyone.
And that's helpful, and it ties in that second document that was in the packet.
Yeah.
Board of Accountancy rulemaking calendar, board consideration, and it's got points 1, 2, and 3.
Yes, that's
So,
essentially the current draft initial version that we developed based on, internal discussions at the staff level and with you, Jason, and essentially our first stop is this committee.
and so this is in significant part a draft of what we'll be working on. And any questions on this? And the other question I'm going to ask is, what else, if anything, should be here?
Yeah, so does anyone have concerns? Is there timeline issues? Do the phases make sense? Are we forgetting something, right? This is completely open field right now. This is nothing but an early draft, right? And I also want to be really clear. I should have said this earlier when I talked about the May 1 deadline, right? That May 1 deadline is essentially, it's a transparency ask. It is not a set of handcuffs being applied to state agencies that says, whatever you publish on that day shall not ever be changed, right? Because all we can do is publish what we know. And essentially, I've tried to get ahead of this a little bit. I think in the latest version that I sent out, there should be, and please tell me if I didn't, but I have in my memory, at least, I had this semi-brilliant idea of put on the page saying, we will update this every month, or some language to that effect, right on the front page, because that's the other commitment, even though that's not directly a governor's ask, but I think that makes sense, right? Because we can only publish what we know by April 30th, but things may also change. We may add committee meetings. Maybe a topic emerges that we have to add to that calendar, right? We're going to have to be a little bit in the moment here, but what I want to assure the public is whatever it is that we end up publishing after today's meeting and after the board meeting, we will update every month with anything that needs to be updated so that the public has essentially knows that this is a semi-live document where at least once a month updates will be made and published.
Comments on this document. You'll notice the note at the very bottom of the second page that is talking about alternative practice structures, and that that's out there, but we're waiting for NASBA and AICPA to do some work on that first.
Yeah.
And that's on their agenda for, I want to say, this summer, isn't it, Martin?
I believe that that's accurate. There may be something a little bit sooner because it appears that there's maybe more than one committee working on different parts of this. And the other thing, and I don't know, I don't want to get too deep into the private equity stuff because that's not really for today. But I do know that Ray has been very kind and willing to take on the peak side of the equation and monitor kind of what's going on AICPA peak side. So I know he's had a chance to take a look at some of the initial work coming out of there. And given your timing, right, I believe that number one, Peak has published something for comment, and I believe, Ray, correct me if I'm wrong.
Peak
comment
has
due on June 15.
published a discussion memo for comment. I think comments are due in May.
I think it's June 15, actually.
Yeah, you're right. They are. Anyway, the Peak discussion memo focuses exclusively on independence issues.
Yeah.
And it's really a deep dive into private equity structures, and trying to ensure that a test side of the firm is independent, and not auditing its own investors in many respects. So I think you've got a good look at the independence issues and trying to ensure that the attest side of the firm is in fact independent. Where the discussion memo does not go is it doesn't go into any other potential issues that would create incentives that might cause somebody to fail to act with integrity and objectivity. I know those are in the back of our minds as we look at this. The peak has taken on probably the most significant issue with independence, but it hasn't gone outside of that realm at this point.
Okay. Thank you. Comments on what we have listed in this draft? Is there anything else that needs to be added? Something needs to be removed?
I think it looks pretty good to me at this point. I don't have any comments on the draft at this point.
And we have at least 2 more LRC meetings scheduled. I think one on June 3rd and the other one on the 23rd, where we have opportunities to, as they say in the US Senate, revise and extend our remarks and take a different position and say, actually, we should add this thing, and actually we will need more time, and the timing here has to change. And if so, that's great, because it means we can then simply update the document at the next time of publication.
I will say, I thought it was nice to put everything all in these individual buckets where you can just see, I mean, it all made sense. It was all what I was expecting. And that said, I appreciate just being able to have it almost like a timeline. And I know that takes a little work to put that together. It looks like it's simple, but it's a lot of thinking. And thank you. I appreciate it.
I will say one more explanatory thing, and I know this is everything that we do, and by we, I mean the regulatory we, has to be happening in the public domain. And it's a really interesting one for this, because I want to be really clear that there's actually kind of a fine line in this document, right? The governor's expectation for the agencies is about rulemaking. It's not about legislation development, right? And in fact, when it comes to legislation development, right, regulatory agencies like us with an oversight board are in a very different position than regular state agencies. Regular state agencies essentially have internal discussions about what they might bring to the legislature. They have an internal development process. They will have internal conversations with DAS. Governor's office might be at the table relatively early on, right? And then there is essentially some kind of a signal that occurs saying, we're now comfortable with you going to the outside to discuss this idea. We cannot operate that way because the public meetings law forbids it, right? When we have an idea of a potential legislative piece, we have to discuss it in a public meeting, right? Whether it's a board meeting, Laws and Rules Committee meeting, Pipeline Committee meeting, doesn't matter. It has to be in the full public. So we don't have that kind of inner core shell that happens outside the public knowledge when it comes to legislation development, right? So for us, this document is actually a little bit of a challenge, for all the regulatory boards, because yes, we could take a narrow view, but I think it was really important for us to talk at least a little bit about, hey, this committee is also going to be working on these legislative pieces potentially, right? Because it's going to be out there, right? It's part of our public meetings, and it would be somewhat disingenuous to suggest that this is all that we're working on, because the reality is we are always kind of straddling the fence between what is a policy issue that we're working on exclusively a rulemaking issue, or is it also a legislative issue? Right? And so in that sense, it just made sense for us to kind of be really clear about that there is some level of intertwinement there. Does it mean that there is everything on there that I think we could ultimately put on there legislation-wise? Probably not. There are some, conversations that I think that need to happen in June and in September, in December at the board meeting before would feel more comfortable kind of saying, yeah, we need to add some other things on there. But for now, I think that's essentially, we're going a little bit beyond kind of what the narrow expectation is from the governor's office to get closer to the totality of what we actually need to do as a committee.
Other thoughts and comments? I don't want to belabor it. If everybody's good, we can roll with this. And as Martin said, we can always make changes. This is just the current roadmap. Beth and Amanda are both being politely quiet.
This is Beth Spencer, and I like what I see on the list.
Okay, Beth or Amanda, pardon me.
Agreed.
Okay. So Angie, do we need any sort of a motion on this, or are we good to go with it?
You guys can just vote to, approve it and move forward, but I think it would be, it's like, well, or I guess you would vote to recommend to the board because the board is the one that needs to approve it. So
Yeah, it's a recommendation vote because the board actually has to, the board will have to approve it at the end of the day. Yeah, which happens tomorrow, right? And the real issue is, are you recommending it as drafted, or are you recommending it as, saying, hey, we need to fix something? But I didn't hear anything there, so it hopefully should be a pretty simple motion of, LRC, somebody makes a motion to recommend.
I'd make a
change or
motion
stuff.
that we forward the draft timeline as drafted, the rulemaking timeline calendar for 2025.
Ray Johnson has moved. Do I have a second?
Sherry McPherson, I second that it be advanced.
All right, vote. Jason Orm, aye. Ray,
Ray Johnson, aye.
Sherry,
Sherry McPherson, I.
Amanda,
Amanda Fells, I.
Beth,
Beth Spencer, I.
motion passes. So that moves to the board. All right. The last thing on the agenda before in the planning session section is additional meeting dates. We've got the 2 set in June, as Martin mentioned. Do we also want to put one, on the books for July? They have it there?
And if we do, could I just ask for a bit of mercy, given renewal season, that if we do July, that we could avoid the first 2 weeks of July where we can barely see straight at the office?
I wonder why that is.
Of course, I know it's vacation.
I've got commitments during the week of the 14th, but weeks of the 21st or 29th are pretty open for me.
Okay, so question. Does the chair need to be present? Because the chair, now Martin's going to totally poo-poo this. The chair is going to be in mostly Scotland during that period of time with his wife, and cell reception may be iffy, and it would also be wise to not bring work into such a trip.
Yes. When is your trip?
We leave on the 20th of July, and we return on the 8th of August.
Would you be willing to consider something before you leave, like around I don't have a calendar in front of me, so I don't know if the 20th is the end of a week or beginning of a week or,
20th is a Sunday,
okay.
so I
Could we possibly do 14 July? It's a Monday.
could do that, but Mr. Pidioni specifically requested the first 2 weeks, and the math guy said that the 14th is in that first 2 weeks. But if we
Yeah.
can negotiate with him, I would like the 14th.
14th would work for everyone.
So it doesn't work for me, but I will be in a more board of massage meeting all day.
How about the 15th or 16th or 17th?
So that week, I'll just say I'll just work around my schedule. I'll be in Pittsburgh for the annual staff, CPA Society staff training interchange, Jason. But
Yep.
you know what? I'm very happy to step out for a couple of hours into a meeting.
Okay.
Just to, this is important.
I could possibly do the 17th, the 15th and 16th are tied up.
Okay, 17th.
Okay, that's oh, yep, I could actually. Yes, I could. Yep, it's the 18th. It's the airplane day. So, okay.
Angie and Martin, the 18th
Yes.
or 17th, pardon me, the
I can do
17th.
17th. Yep.
Okay.
And
I
Beth
was
and
just-
Amanda, Beth's head's doing this. I haven't seen Amanda. Amanda is either frozen in time or really patient and still. Okay, so everybody good on the 17th?
Yes, the 17th works for me.
Okay, you're gonna be 2 hours ahead of, well, we got a couple of people ahead, so more towards late morning, early afternoon, Pacific time?
That would be great. I would say anything after 10:30 Pacific would work. And now I know why I booked an extra night hotel just in case. So
How about 11 o'clock Pacific?
So I have my only meeting that day is from 11 to about 12:30.
1 o'clock Pacific.
that's perfect.
Let's do one.
1 o'clock Pacific, Thursday, July 17th.
And that's for a 2-hour block?
2-hour block. And then are you going to impose upon Quinn to send out an appointment?
Yes.
Martin? Okay.
So question for you, just thinking about format, do you want that to be in person here at the OSCPA in the lower conference room, or do you want it virtual?
Well, need to have virtual setup.
I'd be attending virtually.
Okay, so that it could be lower conference room from my standpoint.
I mean, that's up to you as far as
Yeah.
what you prefer to do. I'm not requesting. I'll be in Pittsburgh. I'll be virtual, but I can get things organized here. I'm just asking because if everybody's virtual, then it's, having it here is a moot point.
Yeah, let's do the lower conference room just in case, because I don't know what all we need to discuss, and it could get all pretty, depending on where things go, particularly also on, because we don't know yet. Right now, we know more about rulemaking than we do about legislative stuff, and particularly if there's some form of a policy direction that comes out of the June board meeting that is then going to be dropped into the laps of LRC to kind of flesh out, particularly around the private equity issue. That could cause some pretty significant work, and may also mean that we may get greater attendance, because it means that we will have, a potentially really difficult issues to work through. Right. And even if that doesn't happen, I do think that just the lift of getting rules ready for 797 implementation, there is it's not a short list of things we need to work through just to make that happen.
Okay, so Thursday the 17th, do you want to schedule one more, or do you want to just hang tight? But that gives us 6 hours between those 3 meetings. there's a part of me that would say, let's hang tight and see where we get after the first one or
Mhm.
two before we schedule additional. We need to be through by September, if I remember right, Martin, so it goes to the board, is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes, and in the interest of full disclosure, just want to say that loud and clear. I know that whatever subsequent meeting we have needs to be before August 27 and after your return. So we were looking at the window of, I think you said August 8 is when you come back?
Yeah, I'm back in the office on the 11th.
On the 11th? Okay.
Yep.
On the 11th, so if we need another meeting, it would have to be between the 11th and the 26th.
Do you want to block a day now just to have it blocked?
Just at least as a backup, it may not be
Mhm.
bad because I don't, in my human experience, calendars tend to fill more the closer we get to the date.
I do. How about the week of the 18th?
I'm gone that week, but I mean, for a couple of hours, I could call in.
No, let's bounce it back to the week of the 11th, preferably Wednesday, Thursday, Friday that week.
Friday,
Friday works.
15th.
Friday the 15th works.
Yeah.
I need to, if we're doing it at the OSCPA Center, I have a hard stop at about 2.
Okay.
Well, shall we do the morning rather than getting into the afternoon so that it stays comfortable?
I have a board meeting at 10 a.m. that day. They don't tend to go long, but I think it would definitely go past at least until noon.
You have a
So-
hard stop at 2, right, Jason?
Yeah, and then Angie, would you just want to be remote?
Yeah, but I don't know for sure I'll be done, so you'd run the risk of me not.
Yeah.
But that's fine. You don't have to wait for, you don't.
Well, I think maybe what we can do is still schedule it for the morning, and then if there's issues where we really need Angie, that we can kind of bring you in late, right? But let's, Jason, would you be comfortable if we schedule it potentially all the way up until 1 o'clock and give you a 1-hour distance between our planned hard stop at 1 and your true hard stop at 2?
That's fine. So maybe start at 11.
Yeah.
And then if we have things for you, Angie, we'll just keep a list. And then if you could pop on after you're through with your other meeting, we can bother you with questions.
And because we're working through like an 11 to 1 and for August and 1 o'clock for July, we could go ahead and see about doing lunch orders, sandwich orders, or do you prefer that people eat before they get there on 7/17? Lunch orders are easy.
I'm good with having lunch orders.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. We'll make it so.
Okay, so this
Thank
is,
you.
I'm sorry, which August date did we land on?
Friday, August 15,
August 15, Friday, okay.
11 to 1 o'clock Pacific Daylight.
11 to 1, okay, which is great because I think we have a BOAC meeting the prior day, so I'm glad that it's of all days, it's not on the same day. So that works out well. So we did that one, and then, sorry, I'm just now, I had a little bit of a computer stoppage here. And then what's the July date that we settled on?
July date is July 17,
Okay,
1 to 3 Pacific.
perfect.
Okay, so that gives us 2 more dates and gives us one in August so we can do cleanup before things have to be to the board.
Okay. Could I get consensus from this group that since we picked those dates, if we're good with those dates, that I would like to amend them into the document we just approved so that we can, because part of the issue is us publishing out our meeting dates, right? So since we set those 2 just now, I would like to add that to the document that goes to the board.
Yes. Yeah, seems reasonable to me too.
So this is Sherry. I make a motion that we amend the document for the 2 dates.
Jonathan, second.
Any discussion? Jason Orm, aye. Ray,
Ray Johnson, aye.
Sherry,
Sherry McPherson, I.
Beth,
Beth Spencer, I.
Amanda,
Amanda Fellows, I.
motion passes, as have all other motions during this meeting, since I forgot to say that on one of them. All right, so that takes care of the calendaring piece. Martin, you have 5.5 minutes left. Do you want to give a brief legislative update? It says time permitting.
Yeah. Yeah, I can do that for a couple minutes really quick, and then you know, Sherry, Jason, you know, all of you have been walking the walk, please fill in. But super high level summary is, you know, I think the last LRC meeting was in January, if I remember correctly. So a lot has happened since then. We've had a great budget hearing. We had a very positive discussion around and a unanimous vote on the in committee on the accounting scholarship bill, and that also went and that did not get a floor vote yet because that one has a subsequent referral to Ways and Means. So the scholarship bill, after unanimous committee vote, is now sitting in Ways and Means, and on May 12th, so about pretty exactly 2 weeks from now, we have tentative work session time for the accounting scholarship bill and the budget bill for the board, because they're intertwined, because the one contains the funding for the other. That's essentially the next step there is May 12th, and assuming that goes well, then we go to the floor votes in 2 chambers after that. On both the House bills, separate floor votes on the House bill. On the House bill, that's our budget bill, that's 5001, as well as floor votes on the scholarship bill. So effectively, I think that it will take until early June. With any luck, we're fully done and in front of the governor by the June 5 board meeting, once all that stuff works its way through the process for those 2 things. With respect to the main bill that we've worked on so hard in this committee, always saving the best for last, right? It's been just tremendous. We have a unanimous Senate vote, a unanimous committee vote on the Senate side, a unanimous Senate vote, 30-0. We had a fantastic hearing last Thursday on the House side. Also no controversy. I'm about to step out of here for the work session on the bill. There is one technical amendment that we're doing as a favor to the governor's office in the Oregon Office of Film and Video that has to do with the conforming sections and section of the bill that essentially helps that office move away from a strict requirement to use CPAs for payroll services for films that as a condition, as a criterion for getting a public subsidy and putting that in as a may rather than a shall. So that's something that Angie and Ledge Council helped work out. Unfortunately, it happened after the Senate passage, so there's that one small little tweak. What that means process-wise is I don't expect any drama today. I expect, you know, this thing to come out of committee today, but it does then mean that it has to be printed as a -B bill because there's a one-word change in the bill. Then it gets to a House vote, and then it has to go back to another Senate vote because of that one-word change. It's what's called a concurrence vote on the House amendments in the Senate. So we have a little bit more process, right? But it looks fantastic. And then the only other piece that I would add to that summary is that we have gotten so much company around the country around bills like this. I mean, things have really moved. But when we testified in February on the Senate side, we had at that point about 17 jurisdictions that were moving bills similar to that. That was already, you know, way higher than national leaderships were predicting even just in November of last year, where they said there would be mostly at most 5, right? We were at 17 by the time we testified. And now, as of today, we're looking at 24 jurisdictions, which now also includes some really mega additions like California and New York, which we didn't have yet on at the time that we testified Senate side. So this really, I mean, at this point, we're way beyond 50% of regulated CPAs practicing in jurisdictions that are updating their licensure pathways and mobility statutes. So it's been a pretty tremendous move on the profession side and in legislatures around this stuff. So we're very, very close. We're 90% of the way there.
And thanks to everybody who's participated in that. It's been a very interesting experience for me to go down and just watch all the process.
Well, it's
Very
really thanks
interesting.
to this group, because quite frankly, if we hadn't done what we did in this committee to bring everybody together and work out all the kinks, this would not have been a smooth process, right? The reason it was a smooth process is not a coincidence, because of the work we did here, right? And the support that we, because of that, got from OSCPA side, OAIA side, right? That, you know, higher education became comfortable with what we were doing and all that. So it doesn't happen for no reason. It's because of what we did here. So you should all feel really great.
Well, just brand new to chime in too. I was reaching for my paper that way I didn't miss any of the jurisdictions. You know, brand new out, it mentions Texas passing the CPA law to push for the change in licensure. So that's Texas along with Tennessee, Indiana, Montana, Iowa, Georgia, Ohio, Virginia, New Mexico, Utah, and Hawaii have all passed. And they're basically Texas is waiting for, you know, a few of those are waiting for governors to sign, but Texas is brand new. So they're waiting for Governor, I think it's Governor Abbott.
Yes,
Fine.
Governor Abbott in Texas.
Yeah. I should know that with Nick living in Texas, but all of a sudden I had like this brain void for some reason. But anyway, yeah, so 11 there. It's hard to believe.
Mhm. All right. Anything else for this committee for today? Thank you for your service. I appreciate it very much. Hearing nothing, I am now adjourning this public meeting of the Laws and Rules Committee. The time is now 12:46, in time for Martin to switch gears and get to a meeting. Please stop the recording. Thank you.